So Ben, we're here at the Ohio History Connection where you collect items from all different decades. And we're actually in a gallery right now that has some Civil War memorabilia. Can you tell me what I'm seeing here?
Yes, this gallery is called Follow the Flags. It highlights our large collection of battle flags. We have over 560 battle flags in our collection that range from the Mexican-American War all the way up to World War II. About 400 of those are from the Civil War. So this gallery really highlights those battle flags.
What is a battle flag and what was it used for in the Civil War?
Each regiment in the Civil War would carry a battle flag. They would have normally two flags, a national flag that looked like the national flag of that time. They also would carry a regimental flag, which would highlight their specific regiment. There were about 200 regiments from Ohio during the Civil War. It was an honor to be the flag bearer because you carried the flag, and that actually allowed people in your regiment to see where they were supposed to go, follow battle orders, that sort of thing.
Now, I know you have some flags that we don't see on display in these cabinets. Can you show them to me?
Yes, I definitely can.
All right, let's go.
Open it up.
Wow, this is a beautiful flag. I can't believe this is from the Civil War. So what regiment was this from?
This actually was from the 44th Ohio Volunteer Infantry, the OVI. They were formed in Springfield, Ohio.
Now, I know that these are all sort of connected to Ohio, but I see Virginia on that. What does that mean?
Right, these are the battle honors. So after the battle, the people in the regiment would go back and add the different battles that they fought in. So you see here the Siege of Knoxville, surrender of Cumberland Gap, Lewisburg, Virginia. These are all battles that this specific regiment served in.
And what are these made out of? It looks like there's some paint, but is it just fabric?
Yeah, actually, the majority of the flags are made of silk. There's a couple made of wool, but silk was more used widely at that time. And then the battle honors were actually sewn on later on. The flags were made by factories that produced these flags for the different regiments, but actually the battle honors were added later on by members of the regiment.
Great. Well, this is a gorgeous flag. Do you have more to show me?
Yeah, I can show you another one.
That is amazing. The reds and the blues.
Mm-hmm.
So what flag is this from?
This is actually from the 56th OVI. I believe they were formed in Portsmouth, Ohio. Again, you can see the different battles that they served in. This is actually an example of a national flag. This flag was most likely made in New York. You can tell by the kind of square canton, the blue field there. That indicates that it was made at a surplus station in New York.
So you said you knew that was in New York. How do you know?
The flags were made in either one of three cities. The majority of the flags we have were made in Cincinnati. The second most that we have were made in Philadelphia, and then we have several that were made in New York as well. But there's certain things you can see on the national flags, the way that the canton, the square there looks, that kind of is an indication of where it came from. They just made them a certain way in each different city. The regimental flags, you can tell by the way the stars are patterned, where they came from.
Wonderful. Can I see the next one?
Yeah.
Now that's a lot of blue. And that eagle, you can see some of the definition. I mean, was that just a matter of really well-made embroidery, or what?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. This one actually features embroidery, which is a little different than the other ones. That indicates that this flag was made in Cincinnati. That's the only city that used embroidery. This is from the 12th OVI. They were formed in Cincinnati at Camp Dennison.
Now, how have you been able to track kind of the history of these flags and where they came from?
Sure, yeah. After the Civil War, each of these flags went back to the state of Ohio. They were actually stored at the Ohio State House. And whenever reunion groups would get together, Civil War reunion groups, they would actually come to the State House and they could check out their flag, kind of like a library, basically. And so they didn't keep the best care of the flags, or sometimes the flags weren't returned at all. In the 1960s, they actually decided they should try to take better care of them. They removed them from the State House. They actually glued them down. They were glued to nylon with an adhesive called polyvinyl alcohol, and that helped keep them together. Not the best way to preserve a flag, but that's what they did in the 1960s. And then for many years, they actually hanged here in the main rotunda at the Ohio History Center. They took them down in the 1980s and put them in storage and put a few out here on exhibit.
And so you talked about the adhesive. I mean, what were the pros and cons on this end of history of using that?
It did help in some regards because a lot of the flags were in very bad condition and very tattered, and so gluing it down helped keep it together. But over time, that glue can eat away at the silk and damage the flag. We have these preserved. They get sent off to a company that does all that. They actually remove all that glue. They have to soak these flags. It gets the glue away. They then add kind of a sheer fabric on the front and the back of the flags. It's called Stapletex. And they sew the fabric around the edges of the flag. And so that's a better method of preserving the flags.
That's really fascinating. Well, this is another beautiful flag. Can I see the next one?
Sure, yeah.
Now this is a little bit different. I mean, it looks like a flag, but it looks almost like it's made from a different fabric than the other one.
Yeah, I believe this one is made of wool as well, so you can tell it's in a little bit better condition. This one is actually from the 51st OVI, actually formed in Dover, Ohio, at Camp Meigs. And you can tell by the kind of rectangular field there that this one was also made in Cincinnati.
So how has this flag been able to maintain its colors?
I would guess the material being made of wool helped it retain its colors a little better than some of the other ones.
Well, that's interesting. All right, well, can we see the next one?
Sure.
Huh, this is a little bit different. This one actually has some stuff missing on it. So what happened here?
Well, yeah, a lot of this was very detailed work, and so over time that just chips away and falls off. You can see this one has been glued onto the nylon, so that's the nylon that you're seeing underneath there.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the background of this flag and where it came from?
Yes, this flag was carried by the 36th OVI. They were formed in Marietta. This shows some of the battles that they fought in. Some of the more famous battles are Antietam. At the top there, it mentions Bull Run. That would have been the second Battle of Bull Run.
Wow. This has got a rich history in it, doesn't it?
Yes, and you can see a lot of these battles were later in the war, 1864.
So were these regiments, were they all kind of formed at different times?
That's a good question. Yeah, usually the regiments were formed and they only signed up for like 3 months. A lot of people thought the Civil War wasn't going to last that long, so they would muster in for about 3 months. But once the war was continuing, they got people to sign up for another 3 years. So that got them to 1864, but even at that point, the war was still going on, and so they had to convince a lot of these regiments to then serve for another year. In 1864, if you could get half of your regiment to re-sign back up, then you would get veteran status, and then you'd get all the veteran benefits. So there were incentives to continue to fight in the war.
So tell me a little bit more about Ohio's role in the Civil War. Were there battles fought here?
No major battles were fought in Ohio. There was a minor skirmish in Bluffington Island, which is down on the Ohio River, but that was kind of the major one. But Ohio did supply about 330,000 soldiers in the Civil War, which is the highest per capita of any state in the Union.
Well, can we see another one?
Sure. Okay, here's another regimental flag. This one's from the 35th Regiment, and they were formed in Hamilton, Ohio. And this is the seal of the United States. If you see a dollar bill, most people recognize that eagle. It's holding an olive branch in one talon and arrows in the other. The eagle is facing towards an olive branch because the U.S. favors peace, even though these were used, of course, during battles.
Can you tell me some of the ways you at Ohio History Connection try to preserve these the best way you can?
Well, we keep them in storage. People love to see these battle flags, but the biggest thing that can damage the flags is light. So having them out on exhibit over time can damage them. So that's why in this gallery we actually rotate the flags. They're only out for a certain amount of time, and then we put new ones out. So we're rotating them all the time. There's humidity issues. We try to keep it kind of a stable humidity level, temperature level, anything we can to help preserve these. And by preservation, we're not trying to restore these flags to how they originally looked. We just want to keep them how they are, and hopefully they won't deteriorate any further.
That's wonderful. Can I see another one?
Yeah.
This is a little flag.
Yeah.
Very tiny flag.
Right.
How is this one different than the rest?
This one's a little different, you can tell. This is called a guidon. It's sort of like a pennant shaped flag. This is actually used by a cavalry unit, so soldiers on horseback trying to carry a large 6x6 battle flag would be difficult on horseback. They kind of act like sails and they'd blow you around. So this is the typical type of flag that was carried by a cavalry unit. This one was actually used by the 13th Ohio Voluntary Cavalry. And they were formed in Warren County.
All right, well, I'd love to see something else.
Sure. This flag was carried by a regiment from Cincinnati, and they trained at Camp Dennison. This one is actually from a battery that was part of the artillery. This is the first Ohio Voluntary Artillery unit, so they were in charge of cannons. Usually light artillery, so kind of the smaller cannons that you could cart around easier. There weren't as many artillery units as infantry from Ohio, but this is one of the batteries carried this flag.
So you've talked about a few different kinds of regiments. How many different kinds of regiments were there in the Civil War?
Yeah, there was basically three types of regiments. Infantry, which was the majority, that's the infantry soldier, that's your basic soldier. And then you have cavalry units, and those are on horseback. And then you have artillery, which is cannons.
Can I see another one?
Yeah.
It's missing something.
Yeah. It's not in the best of shape. This is from the 89th Regiment, which was also formed in Cincinnati. They were actually in the Atlanta campaign, serving in Georgia. Somehow this flag got captured by a Confederate unit. One of the members, actually in 1880, went and somehow retrieved the flag from whoever had it in Georgia. This flag stayed in their family for generations. Ultimately, that family donated the flag to the Daughters of the American Revolution, but they found out quickly that you can't actually own one of these flags. These belong to the state of Ohio. We actually don't own them ourselves, we curate them, but they belong to the state. And so they worked with us and brought the flag here.
So how can people see these flags that are kind of in storage? Do you have special events or anything?
We do often periodically have special events where we open up the cabinets and show people the flags and talk about them. And there are several of the flags on exhibit in this gallery at all times.
Well, that's amazing that you've been able to keep a hold of these. So thank you so much for showing us these flags. I hope people can come in and look at them for themselves, because you really can't imagine what they look like until you actually see it. So thank you for sharing this with us.
Sure, yeah, no problem. Thank you.